What if I told you selling grandma's 20-gauge shotgun for $150 could land you 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine? Sound excessive? Well, that's right up ATF's wheelhouse. In the next few minutes, I'm going to tell you how it started, how we got here, and why you can lay blame directly at the feet of our staunchiest pro-gun fighters, Senate Republicans. Don't worry, you can keep your tinfoil hats at home for this one. This is no longer conspiracy theory, this is no longer conjecture, this is no longer guessing. We have kept the receipts, so strap in and enjoy. You guys may remember last September, ATF and DOJ proposed a rule, a redefinition of who is engaged in business, expanding who is engaged in business, therefore requiring them to register as an FFL and conduct background checks, opening the door to universal gun registration and possibly a ban on private sales. Now, we rang the alarm. We said this is an outright ban on private sales. This is universal gun registration. We were called hyperbolic. We were called alarmists. We were called crazy people. But I want to go back and I want to read you specifically what that initial proposed rule said. I want to get this right. There was no minimum threshold number of firearms purchased or sold that triggers the licensing requirement. Say that again, no minimum threshold. Similarly, there is no minimum number of transactions that determines whether a person is engaged in business of dealing in firearms. No minimum number of transactions. Therefore, one sale could trigger this, and you could register as an FFL, have to conduct background checks, and every firearm transaction goes into the NICS system. That is an outright ban on the private sale of firearms. What would happen if ATF decided you were in violation of this rule? You performed a firearm transaction, you weren't registered as an FFL. The punishment? Up to 5 years in prison, or $250,000. 5 years, $250,000 for potentially a $175 gun. Which brings us to where we are today. You remember everybody that said we were dramatic? We were overreacting, saying ATF is trying to ban the private sale of firearms? How could they ever do that? Well, recently a whistleblower report came out. 2 agents within the ATF have said the administration is directing ATF to ban the sale of private firearms. Guys, we know the ATF. If somebody at the ATF thinks this is overreaching, thinks this is bad, this is draconian, then it has the potential to be even worse than we thought. Now, how did we get to this point? Back in June of 2022, you guys may have remembered the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act bill that was passed. There was a provision in that bill, language, that actually expanded the definition of who was engaged in business. That opened the door for where we are now. And I just want to make a point. Generally speaking, in the Senate, you need 60 votes to pass any piece of legislation. Specifically talking about the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, you did need 60. 60 was the number that they had to get. Democrats haven't had 60 senators in my lifetime. So what does that mean? You're going to need help from Republicans. And guess what? Republicans gave them that help. 15 Republicans to be exact. And I want to name them off so we know exactly who is responsible for this proposed rule. Senator Roy Blunt, Richard Burr, Shelley Capito, Bill Cassidy, Susan Collins, shocker, John Cornyn, the driving force behind the Safer Communities Act, was actually booed in Texas. You guys may have remembered that.
Howdy, everybody.
Joni Ernst also gave us VAWA. Thanks, Joni. Lindsey Graham, conservative once every 5 years during an election year. Mitch McConnell, we know where he stands. Lisa Murkowski, another shocker. Rob Portman, Mitt Romney. See you later, Mitt. Tom Tillis. Tom Tillis is very interesting. Tom Tillis had a revelation about a few months after the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act was passed. He goes, oh my gosh, the Biden administration, they're going to take advantage of this bill. They're going to expand who's engaged in business even further than we anticipated. Tom Tillis, come on, man. Let's take a look at this video.
I supported the bipartisan effort because I thought the policy was going to be good policy and age well. What I don't like are people that are making it harder to get people back to the table and get something done. And you don't get anything done on gun violence around here without bipartisan cooperation, which is why I was very frustrated with President Biden on the day that he signed the Safer Communities Act, One of the reasons I didn't go to that signing is I fully expected he was going to use it to spike the football and talk about more that he needs to get done that he knows damn well doesn't have bipartisan support.
Man, you are one pathetic loser.
Wow, what a revelation by Senator Tillis. Like I said, has to be the smartest man in the room. Who would have thought DOJ, ATF, and the Biden administration would take advantage of language and continue to expand gun control? We did. Pat Toomey and Todd Young. Those are your 15 Republican senators responsible for passing the biggest expansion of gun control since the early 2000s when we saw an assault weapons ban. Fantastic job, guys. Fantastic job. Okay, so where does the whistleblower report leave us? To be frank with you, it leaves us almost in the same position we were 6 months ago when we suspected they were trying to ban the sale of private firearms. We didn't anticipate a 1,300-page rule. The original rule was 108 pages. How much facts, not fluff, is in that additional 1,300 pages? I don't know. It could be justification. It could be response to comments. But what we do know is ATF is alarmed. Agents within the ATF are alarmed at how grotesque this rule is, which leads us to believe that we were absolutely correct in saying this is going to be a ban on the private sale of firearms. When that happens, I don't know. These things can be elongated. April is the deadline for final ruling. That could be pushed. That could go May, June, July, August. Pistol brace rule. That went years. We don't know. But what we've done up to this point is we've done our best to push back and kick back on it. We've delivered tens of thousands of petitions. You may remember myself, Christopher Cooper, President Dudley Brown physically went to ATF in DC to deliver your petitions, our members' petitions, to voice our opposition. We were asked, not so politely, to leave the property. Had to jump through a couple hoops. It's okay, ATF, we got our petitions delivered, don't worry. One for the good guys. We've also drafted 2 congressional letters. 25 members of Congress signed on to a letter demanding ATF accept our petitions. We had another dozen members sign on to a congressional letter opposing the rule itself, altogether 30 or 40 signatures. Up to this point, we've done our due diligence. We fought back against ATF, we fought back against DOJ, and we fought back against the administration. Right now, we're in a holding pattern. We're waiting to see the final version of the rule. Once we get that final version, that opens up new avenues for us to fight. Be it in the courts, be it in Congress, wherever the case may be, we will be ready and we will fight. Touch on a couple legislative agenda items that are coming down the pipe before the Engaged in Business ruling, one of which being the Undetectable Firearms Act, more commonly known to us as a ban on plastic guns. You may remember late last year there was an attempt to permanently reauthorize UFA, which has never been done before. They've done 10 years, they've done 5 years, they've never permanently reauthorized the Undetectable Firearms Act. They put a permanent reauth of the UFA in the Senate NDAA last year. We worked our tails off to get that language stripped out of the NDAA, and we were successful. It was stripped out of the NDAA, but it's not gone. The House still has to pass their appropriations bills, be it in the form of a minibus, which is a smaller package of multiple bills, or an omnibus, a larger package of multiple bills. We met with House leadership 2 weeks ago, and the negotiation right now is whether or not that's going to be a 1-year reauth, a 2-year reauth, a 5-year reauth, a 10-year reauth. A permanent reauth seems to be off the table, but not completely. That could still be negotiated in. We'll continue to work, we'll continue to have conversations, but just know the Undetectable Firearms Act will be in negotiations for the next month, 6 weeks, leading up to that March 8th deadline. There's a deadline of March 8th where we need to get our spending bills passed. That's when our CR expires. There will be an attempt to put UFA in there, and we will work to strip it out. We are not in the business of compromise. We are not in the business of a 2-year reauth, a 5-year reauth, or a 10-year reauth. We are in the business of not reauthorizing gun control. Another legislative item I want to hit is the CJS bill, Commerce, Justice, and Science bill, which generally speaking is where all the bad stuff goes to be funded. NICS, ATF, executive orders, so on and so forth. Well, this year, we actually had a very, very strong CJS bill, and I just want to read a couple of the provisions in this bill. Provides $1.53 billion for the salaries and expenses of ATF. This is $140 million below the 2023 levels. It also defunds ATF rules on pistol braces. It defunds Executive Order 14092, which calls for a ban on assault weapons, along with other multiple pro-gun provisions. Now, this is a solid CJS bill, probably one of the most solid CJS bills I've seen in some time. The problem is it's not going to get passed as a standalone bill. It's again going to be combined with other multiple bills, either into a minibus or an omnibus, which is where legislation goes to have good things stripped out and bad things put in. We've worked to have good language continue to stay in these pieces of legislation, and we will continue to work to have good language stay in these pieces of legislation. And on March 8th, we will see where the chips fall. That's all I've got for you guys today. As soon as we get any more information, if there's any updates on engaged in business, Undetectable Firearms Act, CJS language, you will immediately be hearing from me. You guys have a great day.